So we've got Craig Logan, who is with the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce, Bill Stanfield of Metanoia, and Esther Adams of the Center for Heirs Property Preservation joining us today. Reading a little bit about each of them, Craig Logan is a transformative grassroots leader, speaker, and consultant from Greenwood, South Carolina. He obtained a BS in sociology from Charleston Southern University and is currently pursuing a Master of Science in Project Management and Leadership from Charleston Southern University. He currently leads the housing initiatives as a Housing Executive Fellow for the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce. While serving as the Housing Fellow, Craig is building the Regional Housing Coalition. If you're not a part of that conversation, talk to Craig after this because you need to be a part of that conversation that's taking place. Definitely a great group. But the goal of the coalition is to engage in a tri-county initiative working with 27 municipalities throughout the Charleston, Dorchester, and Berkeley region to champion policy around and the development of attainable housing. Craig serves as the Vice President of the Chicora Neighborhood Association Project Development Committee Chair for Community First Land Trust, is a Commissioner for the North Charleston Housing Authority, and serves on the Charleston County Housing Steering Committee. He's worked with Metanoia, Children's Defense Fund, and the International Children's March, and he's co-founder of Basketball After Dark, which is a grassroots organization providing mentorship, skills training, and a safe place for youth to engage during late night hours. He spends his family and friends. Craig is also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Next is Bill Stanfield, who told me not to read his full bio. He's a very modest man, but Reverend Bill Stanfield is a co-founder of Metanoia Community Development Corporation of North Charleston, where he currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer. Metanoia was begun in 2002 with support from the South Carolina Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. Bill and his wife, Evelyn Oliveira, were hired by this coalition of churches to work to combat child poverty in the zip codes with the highest concentration of child poverty in South Carolina. The point that I like to make when I talk about Bill that's highlighted is the fact that he and his wife spent an entire year living in the Chicora Cherokee neighborhood that Metanoia really services, to understand the needs of the people in the community and to hear the voices of those that live there in that area, and didn't just come in and try to make change to that neighborhood, but brought all of the people, all of the residents, all the business owners together to work together to find solutions that work internally for us. So, I couldn't reading, please. Esther Adams is the Manager of Strategic Initiatives for the Center for Heirs Property Preservation. She has worked for a nonprofit serving the economically challenged population with energy assistance, rental mortgage assistance, budget consulting, developing the curriculum for the Youth Summer Leadership Program, and the Senior Farmers Market Vouchers Program. Esther has also worked in a local hospital with the uninsured population, seeing if they qualify for Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security disability. Ms. Adams has a passion for government as well as the nonprofit sector. She is formerly a planner with Berkeley County Planning and Zoning Department, where she interpreted the zoning ordinance, interacted with the public, conducted site plan reviews, and plat reviews. Additionally, Esther has worked with the development community in the city of North Charleston as a site plan reviewer, and she has a broad knowledge of real estate, having been a real estate paralegal and title insurance underwriter. She received her bachelor's degree from the University of South Carolina in political science and a master's degree from the College of Charleston and the University of South Carolina in public administration. While receiving her master's, she received a certificate in urban planning and recently received a certificate in project management. She's very active in the community. She services the Dean's Council for the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at the College of Charleston, Holy City Trex Advisory Board, Johns Island Task Force, and Community First Land Trust. She's a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Okay. And Whitehall Chapter number 132, Order of the Eastern Stars. Esther resides in Somerville, so you fight that traffic light. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with Mr. Craig Logan, if you want to go ahead and start the presentation for us today.
Good afternoon. Craig Logan here with the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce. So I'm just going to talk some facts, statistics with you guys about the region around housing. So everybody knows that there's a housing problem that we have, right?
Challenge.
I'm pretty sure you know that, and if you've been on 26 in the morning and commuted from Somerville to downtown, I know you know that too as well. So let's just kind of talk about that. So what are the numbers? Right now, there's about 800,000 people within our Tri-County region. That number is going to be pushing it'll be pushing 1 million within, I'd say, the next 10 years, right? And so we know as a region we are growing. There's about 300,000 households, about almost 400,000 workers. We have 27 municipalities. So when we look at this from a regional perspective, we're working with a lot. We're working with a lot of people who move here, average about 30 people relocate to Charleston a day. And so I like to level set with this information because it's good to get this into perspective when we start talking about some of the issues that we're having here. Looking at kind of the economic growth from 2010 to 2019, been about a 30% increase in employment within our region. No, COVID-19 did not slow down that growth at all. I would say Charleston is a very unique community because Charleston tends to trend and do whatever Charleston wants to do while the rest of the nation does what it wants to do, which is great for us. So we look at our kind of average median income wage, it's about $19 an hour. And about 22% of households surveyed responded that they earned it less money during COVID-19. When we think about some of the stats that came out with that, as far as evictions and things of that nature, that kind of plays into that role as well. Right now in Charleston, these are kind of the 3 booming areas when we look at economic growth within our region. So construction, manufacturing, and transportation and warehouse. And so you see kind of what that annual salary is for those particular businesses. We'll talk a little bit later about household salaries, but then also the median sale prices for new constructions all around in general, and the fight for that. Has anybody in here recently been in that fight, purchasing a home? Yeah, it's been fun, right? So again, America's current housing shortage is not just a consequence of challenges brought on by the coronavirus. This is something that has already been going on. It was just brought to the light during COVID-19. So if we look at nationally, kind of the national housing shortage, we are about 5 million units short, and that's between affordable rentals, that's between affordable homes for purchase, and just units in general. So it isn't just a South Carolina problem, it isn't just a Charleston problem, but this is a national issue that we're up against. So just talking a bit about some terminology, has anybody ever heard affordable housing, right? You've heard attainable housing, right? What's the difference, right? Not much difference in either one of them. Affordable housing usually generally looks at AMI from about 80% AMI down to 0. And when we talk about attainable housing, it's just a more inclusive word. And so attainable housing, we like to look at that at the chamber as addressing housing needs from homelessness all the way up to the affluent homes. And so we also know that here in Charleston, that it isn't just an attainable housing issue, it is an affordable housing issue, it's just a shortage of units in general. So attainable housing, more inclusive terminology, but it addresses the shortage across the board, all right? So we know that we just need more units of housing being built here within our region. So to define affordability is simply spending no more than 30% of your income on housing. And when we look at surveys and we look at data points on that, there are a lot of people in our region who are doing that. And so they are considered to be cost burden, right? So they're spending more money on housing and having less money to save, to provide for their families, to do everything else that they need to do because the cost of housing is rising and it's so high right now. So looking at this as it pertains to our region, right, Charleston's population is growing about 3 times faster than the U.S. average. And again, we have about 800,000 people in our region. We have about 33 people, as I mentioned, that move to our region every single day. Housing is the single greatest expenditure for nearly all households in our region. decade of population growth in our region has also strained the market, which is, again, this happened pre-COVID, but again, because COVID happened, that just made everything kind of come to the forefront. And it really is a big issue, and we're hearing more and more about it now, but as we talk about it, we also got to be mindful about talking about solutions towards those things. So some quick facts. About 89,000 estimated households are experiencing housing cost burden. That's about 30% of our region here in Charleston. All right, if we look at $13 million of emergency rental assistance rented out to over 2,500 households within the Charleston and Berkeley counties. 17% increase in median house sale prices from January to September of 2021. 32% of household survey respondents reported that they could not afford to live in the area that they preferred to live in, which is typically going to be closer to schools, closer to where they work, having a shorter commuter time on the interstate. And so 62% of businesses responded affordability negatively impacts their ability to hire quality talent, right? And so now we get to a point of where it's not just, oh, we have a housing issue, but now it's dealing with economic development, all right? And when we talk about how do we acquire top talent to our area, well, the one thing that they're going to talk about is they may come through the interviews, and I've actually had this conversation with a few HR professionals. They go through the interview process, and they get to that last interview, and it's like, I'm going to decline the job because I can't afford to live there, right? If I take this job, I can afford to buy the house or I can afford to rent it, but I'm not going to be able to have a quality of life. So let me go to Atlanta or let me go somewhere else to where I can really afford to live the life that I want to live. So those are just some important things to keep in mind as we talk about housing and attainability and some of the issues that are going on in our area. So the need, so it's estimated that by 2040 that there will be a 26,000 to about a 34,000 unit shortage within our region. All right, and keep in mind, we talked about 33 people a day, all right, 33 people a day moving in our region. There are currently about 9,200 legally restricted attainable housing units in our region, and there's a 10,000 deficit of rental units for households earning less than $35,000 within the Tri-County region. So there's just simply not enough affordable housing for people who need to have affordable housing in our region. Right? We talk about affordable housing and not being enough. There are not enough units at all. So then you get into a battle of, hey, I'm just going to take what's available, right? And so now you have the affluent homes then stepping down and purchasing what they can afford to, and everybody's in this fight and in this race for housing that is available. And that's why we're kind of where we are right now. I'll skip some of these because it's a lot of numbers and a lot of data points, but what this simply is saying is regardless of income amount, that you have at least 20 to 30% of people in each of these income amounts that are still housing cost burden, right? So they are still spending 30% or more of their income on housing. So again, apartments, right? People say, well, I can't afford to buy a home, so I'll just rent an apartment. Well, apartments are no longer affordable to median household incomes. Apartments are going up every single day, right? I hear stories all the time of people who say, I got a letter to where my rent's gonna raise $400, or what am I gonna do, right? And so you have this issue, we have this problem that's going on, and we really have to start thinking regionally about solutions to kind of correct these issues that we have going on. These are just some averages of rental units around the Tri-County area, and keep in mind, these are for one-bedroom rental units, okay? So looking at Charleston, we're talking about Peninsula, in that area, $1,700, Summerville about $13, North Charleston is about $14, Goose Creek about $14, Hampton Heads about $13. I mean, you're not getting a lot of apartment for those amounts that you're paying. And at any given time, your rent can increase, all right? It just depends on what your landlord wants to do that day, right? But these are things that we have to have in mind when we talk about, again, attracting those quality talent, that pool, when we look at hiring. And when we look at people not spending 30% or more of their income on housing. So again, this right here just points out to the fact that there is a undersupply at the bottom and there's also an undersupply at the top. So there's not enough housing for 0 to 30 to 40% AMI, even up to 60% AMI. But then also even over 120% AMI, there's not enough housing either. So you have a fight for the housing that is available. And so now we have a heated market, a very rigorous market. I had a good friend who was purchasing a home, and she put in about 5 offers, and she was beat out every single time with cash offers, sometimes $50,000 in cash over the asking price.
Wow.
So the question is, how can we compete in a market like that, right? So again, it can be depressing talking about these things, but I think the educational aspect of this is the bigger part that we have to understand when we talk about these things. So housing products, so these are just average medium incomes, and take in mind this is from 2000 to 2009. All right, so Charleston County is about 250,000, Berkeley about 165,000, and then Dorchester mirrors that too with 165,000. So 2000 to 2009. All right, so this is based on 2021. So we look at Berkeley County, we're now at $379,000. Charleston County is average of about $500,000, and Dorchester County is average of about $300,000. All right, so homes are remaining on the market now for about 2 weeks, and that's a change from about -12% from this time last year. The metro has an area housing supply stock of 16 days. A healthy market should have a housing supply stock for 6 months. All right, and so again, that lets us know, why is there competition? There's just not enough units available out there for it. And so if we look at that, to break that down a little bit more, the median sale price continues to increase, but again, the monthly supply continues to decrease, right? And so we still talk about that fight for what's available, getting beat out by cash offers. This is why we don't have enough housing units that are available in our region. So what can be done? Preservation of existing and naturally occurring affordable housing, streamlining development regulations to increase overall housing inventory. All right, so you get to talking with the development community, and a lot of times they're saying, man, I want to get into affordable housing, but just the process of getting into it takes forever. And then that makes the project not affordable anymore. All right, so as a region, how can we begin to think about these issues? Better communication of existing affordable housing programs available to increase community awareness, explore use of tax incentives, and then to share a regional approach. All right, and so when we talk about preserving and developing new opportunities, we also want to look at the opportunity, and I always say there's an intersection between housing, transportation, right? You spend more time when you live further away from your work. Between economic development, there are all intersections there. And so we know that the low country rapid transit is something that's going to be coming, but that's going to be an opportunity to really look at how can we really expand housing in these areas? How can we make transportation more accessible for all people? And then what would it look like, you know, to really imagine housing along this corridor to where people can eat, where people can play, and where they can work locally, so that transportation is not an issue in that standpoint. So what we're doing about it, right? So over at the Chamber about 3 years now has made housing attainability one of its top issues. And with the Chamber being a convener of so many businesses in the area, why not, right? Why not get involved? Why not be a convener for this? And so in August, we launched a regional housing coalition, and I have some handouts over here too as well, so please feel free to pick this up on your way out. But there's a QR code on the back of this, and what we're doing is we're looking at it from a regional perspective, and we're working with local governments, local organizations, a very grassroots, community organized coalition, just to bring people to the table and have conversations about this, right? We know a big part of this is education, right? So how can we educate people? We know that there are people who will say, man, there's no attainable housing issue in our region, right? Or I don't want affordable housing in my neighborhood. So it's an idea of educating people, and then as we educate them, we want to bring them on as advocates to help us tell the awareness about what's going on in our region. And then we want to activate policies locally and at a state level that are going to help make housing attainability more accessible to all people. And so the mission of the Regional Housing Coalition is to be a convener of community members, governments, for-profit businesses, and nonprofit organizations to unify the region's efforts to provide attainable housing to all people, regardless of neighborhood or individual characteristics. And so I invite you guys to come along this process with us. It is a very each one teach one kind of organization, right? And so it takes me going out, spreading the word about it, and then you also spreading that word to your networks and your circles of influence to really make a difference with that. So again, there will be slides or handouts that you can take along with that, but also there's a QR code here. So if you want to snap a picture of that, but this QR code is also going to be available on the handout and slide over here. And yeah, thank you so much. And a lot of what we're doing, right, from a regional perspective, Mr. Bill Stanfield is doing it on the ground at a local perspective. And so you're going to get an opportunity to kind of hear about that next. So I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Greg. The real blessings of my life and my work at Metanoia is that we got to work with somebody like Craig Logan for a number of years. He worked in our shop before going and working for the chamber, and see how much he's grown and learned and done since he was just a college student. It's a joy. Thank you, Craig. Craig is right. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of what does housing affordability look like kind of on the ground. We're going to talk about a couple of projects. We'll talk about sort of how do people get that done. And then talk, we can sort of, just to sort of talk about those dynamics a little bit, and then we'll let Esther talk about the Center for Heirs Property Management, very important work. All of us deal with housing unaffordability every day. If you ever get stuck in traffic, it's a housing affordability issue, because people can't live close to where they work. They got to buy out to Ladson or even beyond Ladson now and then commute in. That's our traffic issue. If they have education issues or housing affordability issues, because when we have high concentrations of poverty in certain neighborhoods, you have lower performing schools related to that as well. That's a housing. All these things relate to housing. And we got involved in housing at Metanoia. We started off just working with young people in the community, and back in 2005, we had a couple young women that came to our after-school programs, and we thought there might be bedwetting issues, because frankly, there was a sort of smell about them, but we realized it was really their absentee landlord wouldn't fix the plumbing under their house, and they had raw sewage laying under their house. And they had about an 800 square foot house, and they had a $500 a month electrical bill because they literally had holes in the house. We said, gosh, we can offer the best after-school care in the world, but if a young person's going home to that, so we got involved in housing development. And we sort of started with just homeownership housing. Now Metanoia, we built or renovated about 15 units of homeownership housing since that time, about 30 units of rental housing. We get involved in both. We also repair homes for people on a fixed income that can't afford to fix their homes up. Back then it was homeownership or housing was about how to help this one family stabilize, which is still critical. But now Metanoia's work is also about equity, because we see how much investment is being poured. We're sort of in this little donut hole in North Charleston between like Park Circle and downtown, where already property values have gone up sometimes over 1,000%. And we still live in a community where there's some opportunity to get this right before people are going to have to be commuting from Orangeburg or somewhere like that, And so the way that a nonprofit like Metanoia kind of makes housing affordable is a new 3-bedroom in our neighborhood costs right now about $300,000 to build. Construction costs are crazy. I mean, I can remember we could just about build a house like that for probably $120,000, and now it's a double. Well, a family earning 80% of the area median income for family of 4 is $48,000. A lot of families in our region earn about $48,000 a year. So what they can, they're 30% of their monthly income, which is where ideally a housing, what your housing payment is $1,200. Here, $300,000 house costs $2,100 of a mortgage, so there's a gap. So an organization like Metanoia sort of works with banks and the philanthropic sector, government funding, to sort of put together deals where people can actually afford the place that they live, and try to make it sustainable. So we go through, we have work to try to acquire property, and then we have to attract additional funding, and we construct the property, manage that, and then finally find somebody that qualifies to either buy it or rent it at the end of that scenario. I'm not going to go through this. This probably is going to be shared maybe, but this is just like a whole definition of terms. If you ever want to get your feet wet in affordable housing, you'll hear a lot of people talking about these kinds of terms, like 80% of area median income, which is, or forgivable loans, all these things, bridge loans. These are all sort of key terms to the work that we do. But basically, our primary sources come from either the government, which is HUD funding that flows through either the county or the city of North Charleston, or the South Carolina Housing Finance and Development Authority, which just funds rental housing. They don't do homeownership housing. So we use local funds for homeownership housing, state funds for rental housing. And then there are some private sources. We were grateful that Cummins just gave us $1 million total. $625,000 of that is used for some of this kind of work, property acquisition, to keep housing affordable. We have raised some funding over the last few years to be able to buy property, because property is just getting more expensive, and land bank it, because once you own the property, you can sort of keep more equity, keep more mixed income communities, keep people more integrated in their neighborhoods. We have, the peninsula of Charleston was at one point, I think about 67% African American. Unfortunately, race and class are very tied together in Charleston, as most of us know. Now the peninsula of Charleston is getting close to 20% African American. So a lot of those folks got pushed out to North Charleston, and now that threat is again pushing again. So we've tried to stay ahead of that and buy property and redevelop housing for both homeownership and rental. So this is a house that we're now renovating on Carlton Street. There's some little renderings of a Clemson student did for us, what it might look like when it gets finished. And I just want to show sort of like the way this works. We're not going to go into detail on these numbers, but we have sort of sources that include some different funds that we steward, either county funds. We usually get a construction financing loan from a bank, and then we might apply a little bit of equity. We had a gift from Ingevity years ago that goes into this project. And then sort of our costs, you can see the cost of the house is $266,000. It's a combination of loans, and then eventually we try to sell the house, though, for $160,000. So we have to plug that difference between the cost to us and the cost to the end buyer with a number of different sources that are up here ahead. Like we pass these sources along to the buyer in the form of what's called usually a second soft mortgage. So in other words, it's just so they don't flip the house. They have to get a qualified first mortgage for that $160,000 from a conventional bank, and then we give another mortgage that's deferred, so you don't have to pay on it as long as you stay in the house. It gets forgiven over the course of several years. So if you stay in it 20 years, that money's forgiven, and you own the house, and you can build wealth for your family. Homeownership is the leading way that America's middle class got built. And when it was happening, black folks couldn't access it, by and large, very rarely. And so, we have to sort of figure out ways that still today people can access this wealth-building tool for themselves and for their families, and so that even as values go up, they can enjoy some of that growth for themselves and economic prosperity. So this just sort of shows you how long it takes to develop a house like this, from January 21 to February 23. So we're kind of in the middle of this right now. We're about to start construction on this property, actually. It takes a long time to get the funding put together. It takes a long time to manage the construction, identify buyers. Affordable housing, the reason why we don't have more of it, there's multiple reasons. It's not that easy. It takes there's a lot of regulatory hoops to jump through, because a lot of the funding is government money. It's not that easy to apply for. It's not that easy to steward. And so we have to do everything every conventional developer does, but we make less money, and it's harder. So that's why there's not many people involved in it. And so this is another project. It's more of a rental project that we have in North Charleston. This is the Golden Dream Townhomes. Just talking with, where'd she go? There she is, a Liberty Hill resident. We're doing this in partnership with a family that owns the land in Liberty Hill. That family's ancestors were one of the 4 original founding families of Liberty Hill. Liberty Hill was founded by 4 freedmen, bought land up in Liberty Hill right after the Civil War. And this family still owns this land. They wanted to keep the land, but they were worried about housing affordability within Liberty Hill, because they saw Liberty Hill changing and the threats to all the redevelopment around it. So we built a deal where we did a ground lease with them, so they'll continue to own the property. and Metanoia did a 50-year ground lease for them where we'll build this property, keep it affordable, manage it. At the end of 50 years, it'll be theirs. We'll keep it, the family earns a little bit of income every year. And so this is projects being done in partnership with the South Carolina Housing Finance Development Authority. This is the groundbreaking. It's under construction right now. It's behind the Family Dollar on Montague. If you get a chance to roll by it, it's kind of an interesting project because it's built, I should have brought one of the blocks, but it's built with poured concrete construction. So it's these foam blocks that look like Legos, really, and they put these together and they pump through concrete into the walls, and it's built like a tank. It'll last a long, long time. If a hurricane happens, that's where you want to be. So, so this is a lot more expensive project, but still, we use a combination of forgivable and repayable loans. Forgivable loan is as long as the property stays, we manage it properly, it stays affordable, we don't have to pay that back. If we were to start charging market rate rents, we would have to pay it back. We're not going to do that, but that's kind of how it works. But the South Carolina Housing Finance and Development Authority provides most of the funding for this, and then sort of there's the cost of this for us. And so it costs us, there's 8 units in that apartment complex. It costs us almost $400,000. It's more expensive construction. This type of construction is built to last. It's all funded by one entity in the state, but it's very expensive per door, $400,000 per door for 8 units. But this property will have a lot of affordability built into it because the units are both, most of our properties are 80% AMI. So this unit only has one unit of 80% AMI. It'll rent for about $1,200 a month, but it goes all the way down to 30% AMI. I don't think you'll be able to find a new unit of housing anywhere in the Tri-County region that you can rent for $293 a month. So that unit is going to have a lot of demand. And sure enough, when we have a house open up in the community, it is not uncommon for us to have 20, 30 people applying for one unit of housing, because that's sort of the demand and how the lack of housing affordability is really everywhere. And so this will be a mix of incomes here. This just shows sort of the annual operating, how it sort of comes into the property and what the expenses are and how it sort of goes from there. So this is the timeline for this one. Since 2019, we've been working on this project. We'll finish it in the spring of next year. So these are just some final sort of thoughts before I hand it over to Esther, and then we'll have a panel discussion here in a minute. But if you know folks that are interested in rental property through us, you can access this. There's an application here, link here, but which will probably be sent out. But there's also on our website, go to the housing section of our website, there's an online link to both rental housing as well as people who live in 29405, homeowner repairs. We're doing some homeowner repairs with Cummins funding these days, so there's an online application for that too. What can I do? Support the Regional Housing Coalition that Craig just talked about. I'm a part of that. Support groups like Metanoia, other groups that are doing affordable housing. Support, help us push Charleston County to do more. We don't have any, we're sort of rare, unfortunately rare, for a region of this size. There really isn't, outside of the city of Charleston, where it's very hard to build affordable housing because the land cost is so high, there's no local source of funding for affordable housing. Most cities this size, there would be federal dollars that flow in, but there also would be local dollars. Now in Charleston, there is some local dollars because the city of Charleston passed some bond referendums, but in North Charleston, where you could actually, a dollar goes a lot farther still, there's no local money. There's no local money from Charleston County, there's no local money from the city of North Charleston. So getting those entities to sort of pony up, if you will, because this is such a critical issue, is something that we've been working a lot with the chamber on and making sure that we could do better, which we can do better. And so, but there are other ways to improve housing affordability. Little developers like Metanoia are never going to solve this issue wholly. We need more supply in the market. We need larger developers to put more supply in the market at sort of middle income ranges. We need more supply, period, because of the sort of dynamics Craig said. Even higher higher cost apartments actually help improve housing affordability because more supply and demand. The more supply you have, the better the cost goes for other places. So, if you need help, I just put a few things here. 211 hotline, of course, the United Way. There are groups. Metanoia used to do financial literacy. We sort of focus exclusively on the building side of things right now because we sort of realized a lot of people come to us for financial literacy, like no amount of financial literacy in the world is going to help you if your rent or mortgage cost is this high. You just know how much you're losing, you know how much you can't afford. You're very aware of it, but it doesn't help. But go to groups like Origin, Increasing Hope, Trident Urban League for financial literacy. Come to groups like Metanoia, local housing authorities to help if you're interested in affordable housing, and the Center for Heirs Property Management to resolve heirs property issues, which are really important. And so I'll kick it over to Esther, and great segue.
So, Center for Heirs Property Preservation, we are a nonprofit located here in North Charleston. Recently, we moved downrivers. We were on Sam Rittenberg. We are in 22 counties in the state of South Carolina, in the Low Country and the PD. Next year, we will be moving into the Midlands. So we like to start by telling everyone how we at the center define what heirs property is. So for us, heirs property is when a descendant passes the property on without a will and without a probate. We found here in Charleston and a lot of the settlement communities, some of the most recent deed will go back to the late 1800s. In the Phillips community, most people, their deed is from 1876. So you can imagine if the most recent deed is 1876, how many descendants you have in 2022. It's a lot. We found that it's a predominantly African-American problem within the South, but we've also identified it on Indian reservations as well as in Appalachia. That is a problem that they have as well. A lot of the people who don't understand that, so if you're living on heirs property and if a hurricane comes in, FEMA would not help you traditionally. They recently changed that before Hurricane Ian came in, and now they're saying that if you can prove that you're an heir and you live on this property, that they may assist you. So Hurricane Ian was the first hurricane that happened since they came up with that new policy, and we are in the process of seeing how people in Florida will be affected by that. But heirs property is a big problem, particularly here in South Carolina. We see it a lot here in the Tri-County. So we're talking, you can't have homeowners insurance. If hurricanes come in, you can't get assistance. If you need rental assistance, you get rental assistance, you can get that. But if you need to repair your home, you can't go to Habitat for Humanity or anything like that. There's a lot of limitations on you if you have heirs property. At the center, we like to have everything in buckets. So we have basically 3 buckets for our service. The first is prevention. We offer legal education where we go to different communities in those 22 counties that we serve, and we give presentations on what heirs property is, why you need to fix it, why you need clear title, what the process is. We also do wills. If you are 80 years old, we will give you a will for free, 80 and older. If you're under 80, you can come to the center and get a will for $50, which is the deal because most attorneys charge about $350 to $400 to get a will. We also have wills clinics in our different service areas. So if you sign up for if you sign up to get a will at a wills clinic, that is free. We are really, really big advocates of everyone getting a will. I see a big range of ages here in this room. I know people my age, we don't get wills a lot for different reasons, but we do want to push that younger people should get wills as well. So we do provide that service. Our second bucket is resolution, where we do family mediation and family meetings. What we found is a lot of times people know what heirs property is. They know how it affects them, but it's very hard. I don't know how your family is, but mine, for everybody to get in the same room and come to one conclusion. So we came up with, we do family mediations, we have family meetings. Sometimes it's all of this family on this side we have to meet with, and we meet with the other side next week. It gets crazy, but we definitely provide that. As well as land use. So we have a sustainable forestry program where we work with NRCS and USDA, where we provide forestry technical assistance. And given my background as a former planner, we also do land use workshops in those 22 counties. One other thing I really want to point out, if you have heirs property or if you have anybody who has heirs property, we also offer 1 free hour of consultation advice with an attorney. So that person can call, make an appointment, you can come in, bring your deed, tell us your family story, and that attorney will give you some advice on how you should move forward in order to clear your title. And one other thing we're noticing now with tax sales, particularly in Dorchester County, it happened probably about a year ago, they changed the rule. So usually if you lose your property tax sale, you have a year and a day in order to reclaim it. In Dorchester County, if you lose heirs property, they're no longer letting you reclaim it. It's already been to litigation. They have supported Dorchester County interpretation of the law, how they are interpreting it, because they usually leave that to the municipalities to come up with their own rules. And in Dorchester County, if your heirs property goes up for tax sale, you can no longer reclaim it. Whereas in Charleston County, if you have heirs property, you lose it at tax sale, I can walk in and be like, hey, I'm an heir, we lost it on tax sale, we want to reclaim it. You give them the payment and you go upon your way. And with Dorchester doing that, and we know how in the Low Country, how everything, Dorchester, Berkeley, and Charleston, they kind of work together. We're a little, what's a good word? Concerned that will become the new trend. But we are seeing in Orangeburg and Horry County that they may be leaning in that same direction. So we tell everyone, pay your taxes. You know, now everybody that just got their tax bill are about to get it. So that's what we're really honing in on. Pay your taxes. Do not wait until it goes to delinquent tax sale, because you don't know if you would be able to get it. And I think that is the center in a nutshell. Any questions? If not, I'll turn it back over to you, Monisha. And I do have rack cards that has a little write-up on what heirs property is and our contact information if you take some as you're out the door.
Thank you. Definitely a lot of good information. I've been over here jotting notes like crazy so that I can share this with as many people as possible. We do have a couple of questions. We have some folks over at Mount Moriah, right down the street on Rivers Avenue, and they've submitted a couple of questions in the chat that I think are directed for you, Bill. The first question is, how can people apply to buy those homes, and what are the qualifications? I'm assuming you're talking about the homes you talked about.
Yeah. So the new homes that Metanoia is building, we have 2 we're about to finish, another one in the next 6 months, and we'll have another probably 5 coming online next year, are available to people that are 80% or less of the area median income. And so if folks are interested in applying, they should call our office, and we can sort of refer them to the right person to begin that conversation. 80% area median income for a family of 4 right now, I think, is about $48,000 a year, so you have to be below that level. If you're a family of 3, it would be a little less. If you're a family of 5, it's a little more. It's adjusted for income size. You can Google it, actually, Charleston County area median income, and pull up those numbers. But that's the first place to start, and then just reach out to our office, go to our website, and give us a call.
Perfect. Well, I know once Golden Dream is up and operating, you're going to have a ton of applications.
Yes.
Like you just said, that median income for a family of 4 being $48,000
Yes. affords
them, what, $1,200 that they could put to a home. So the rents that you're showing for Golden Dream, I can only imagine, and it's great. So thank you for the work that you all are doing. Next question is, does Metanoia offer grants for seniors?
I'm not sure if this is in reference to fixing up one's home. We do have a repair for helping people that live in 29405, the zip code 29405, to help repair their homes. There's an application on our website. At different times, depending on the funding source, sometimes we've had other funds to help people that live in North Charleston repair their homes. If you live outside of North Charleston, you might try calling the Community Development Department of either the City of Charleston or Charleston County to see what groups might be available to help with that, if that's the kind of grant. We don't do sort of other kinds of assistance for seniors, those kinds of grants.
And Mount Moriah has one more question. love the questions coming in. So, this says, question from someone who lost their apartment recently with eviction because of rent increase.
Yeah.
What first steps do you take to start over? That's it.
Well, that's a story that's all too common nowadays, I think. And, you know, I know it's hard to find another place that you can afford. And I wish, you know, there were better options about how to sort of get going again. But I think reaching out to, you know, trying to find places that are building housing affordable. I think this person could call our office and we can, or go online and fill out an application, although we don't have any current vacancies, we may. So just trying to stay on top of it. But it's that's a concern that's happening a lot. There was a lead article in the paper maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago about how often people are getting pushed out of their apartments because of massive rent increases.
211 might also be able to provide assistance for them if they haven't called that already.
Thank you. That's Brad Davis, who is our interim CEO here at Trident United Way. Definitely, I'm glad you mentioned 211 services, just because I had my little printout here that spoke to me from the last meeting that I attended at Trident United Way, that this is just for the month of August, the monthly report for 211. They had an increase in total calls of 17%. So they had 1555 calls to the 211 services just in the month of August here in this Tri-County region. And the calls were ranging from, the increase was 1555, I'm sorry, it was more than that, it was more than 2,000 people that called. But needs from electric to water to rent assistance to shelters, I mean, it just speaks to what you all shared here today. It all ties in completely together. If you're struggling and you're able to pay your rent, then more than likely going to need help with any of the other utilities and services. So it's a never-ending cycle for sure. So 211 is definitely a good resource. Feel free to reach out for any needs there for sure. Any questions from anyone in the room?
Yes, I did have a question. In reference to the townhouses that are being built on the property, which I think is just amazing, that the home or the land is going to stay with the family, which is really important right now. My question is, for the townhouses that are being built, are they going to be in particular for Black and brown people, or are they just in general? Because that community is an African American community, at least predominantly. And I was just curious if you all are offering it to specific demographics, or if it's just in general to everyone.
That's a great question. So this has come up, like even some of the money we got from Cummins was around increasing like homeownership in the Black community, which all the homeowners except for one homeowner that we've had is African American. We are not legally allowed, actually, there's fair housing laws that prevent us from saying this housing can only be rented to one particular race, because we are concerned about the cohesiveness of communities. We do attend to where and how we market properties and who those properties are advertised with, and most, I would say, well over 90% of our renters and homeowners are Black homeowners or renters, and so we can attend to how we market those properties, but we can't sort of have a firm, this is only for this particular demographic. Those laws were put in place because people were saying that saying the other way. Actually, in Chicora, the neighborhood where I work, on my house deed, I still live in Chicora. My house was built in 1945, and you go back to the original deed of every house in Chicora, and it'll say on that deed, should not be rented, sold, or disposed of to persons of African descent. So you see it, right there. And that, is not inconsequential to the issues we're facing today. Like it's all part of the same history and consequence. So.
Any other questions, Jennifer? Go ahead.
Yeah, question probably for Craig. How, I know it's a different approach, but how and are you working collaboratively with the habitat organizations in the region? The consortium.
So we are, I think things. So I serve on the Housing Steering Committee, and I serve both with the CEOs from Charleston Habitat and also the Habitat located on Johns Island. And we have had conversations. Lynn Bowler, who's the CEO of the Charleston Habitat, she serves on one of our committees on the Regional Housing Coalition as well. And so for us, it's about just having that educational piece, and also allowing Habitat to bring some of their strategies that they're using to address a lot of the issues. I know in Habitat, I'll say they are an organization that is a very by any means necessary. So if it's a solution out there or if there's an opportunity to build, they're going to work whatever pieces they can to get it done. And so I know they're working with the land trust that Esther served on, and so that's an opportunity to where they can build a house, but then also the house stays affordable on that land too as well. So we are working with Habitat and just other organizations out there. So many people doing so many things, and I think the coalition gives an opportunity for us all just to join together and just push forward just under one face, right? So when we do have these conversations with elected officials or county government, we can say, hey, we have this group of people who all support and back what we're saying, and so.
No, I think the table is a great idea.
Yeah.
Is there a reason you don't have Dorchester Habitat involved?
No reason at all. It's just.
They're pretty well run.
Well, listen, I'm gonna make a note of that, and I will reach out to you.
Board member sitting next to me.
Okay, I think Jennifer has a question.
I wanted to know if there was any emphasis, you mentioned a lot about attainable, affordable housing, but are we doing any focus on workforce housing? That comes up a lot in our agency, Housing and Community Action Partnership, because you have to meet a certain income level, but our goal is that your children won't qualify for our services because we help you with your education and things of that nature. So one of the hardest things that happens to people, they're afraid of success. Because as soon as you get that certification, as soon as you get that associate's degree, then you lose your food stamps. You lose that, and then you can't qualify for the affordable housing. So is there any emphasis on marketing or being aware of the workforce, tourism, healthcare, not an RN, CNA, is still a thriving in our workforce?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say a couple things come to mind about that. I mean, one thing I'd say is that all the housing that we build is workforce housing. Like I'm not telling you anything you don't know, Jennifer, but like sometimes in some circles I hear people saying, well, what about affordable housing versus workforce housing? But I just want people to know that people that live in affordable housing are working.
Yes.
I sort of say that. Sometimes there's a stereotype, right, out there. And all the families that we rent to or we sell a house to are working. The good news about home ownership, people that buy homes through us, is once you buy that home, the income guideline is set at the purchase, but after that, you're free to make whatever you want. Nobody's going to take that home from you. So that's a good way to sort of have those families make progress. But I think there are other things that can be done. I mean, Esther's here from her former career. Like, there's a lot that could be improved in the areas of zoning that can improve housing affordability. Like right now in North Charleston, we have R1 zoning, which is single-family zoning, or R2 zoning, which is multifamily zoning. There are lots of places that have found a middle ground zoning between those two things, so that can allow somebody to put an apartment over their garage, or add one more unit to their, and then you increase the ability of neighborhoods to house more people.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so, to get, to find innovative solutions that allow generally other people to get in on this and not just have it all be a Metanoia or a Habitat or whoever has to build this stuff, but allow other people to get in on it in a way that improves housing affordability is very helpful, I think, too. So.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I mean, I know one developer in particular, Tony Berry, one project that they did, it's in Mount Pleasant, but it's for workforce housing, right? So you talk about that area median income, and you get into that area where make above 80% AMI, but I make under 120% AMI, right? And so a lot of times there are not a lot of housing options or programs for that particular area. And so I know, just in particular off the top of my head, I know Tony did an awesome project in Mount Pleasant, and they have another project that's going on right now in West Ashley, but it meets that area median income between that 80% and 120% AMI. And I mean, I think the thing with it is just, I think one thing we have to be just conscious of is that when people get into development, they do it for money, right? So we can't not understand that. But again, when we talk about just the zoning issues and we talk about just the streamlining process issues, a lot of that steer people away from that, right? And so that's where, as a region, as county-wide, we have to look at what those processes look like and how can we make incentives more attractive for developers to want to provide those kind of types of housing like that.
Thank you.
You have a question over here?
Hey, I'm Kanani. My pronouns are she, her. My question is for, does Metanoia work with individuals who have a home that they would like to turn into affordable housing, but they're having trouble making a walk through the process of, like what you showed, like it's a process, but does Metanoia offer support for individuals who would like to take that walk as well?
So the individual would own a property, they're not living in the property, they want to make it affordable rental housing, is that what you're saying? I think we have sort of consulted with folks that own property within the communities that we operate in. And so if you know of somebody in that boat, feel free to call us and we can help help them kind of put a game plan together for how that might work and evaluate the property and see where it is and kind of walk them through it. We can't sort of do everything, but we definitely would help them sort of walk through that process and see what we could do to help them figure it out.
I have one other question.
Yeah.
For your application process for rental properties, asking about the equitable, how equitable the application process is. In Charleston, a big problem here is serial evictions amongst tenants. So if anybody's not familiar with that, you can get an eviction on your record. You're 1 day late for rent, and that can happen month after month after month. It's definitely a tactic that's employed by landlords to get folks out. So is that something that y'all take into consideration during the application process?
We do, yeah. I mean, she's referencing, North Charleston has the highest eviction rate in the country, the United States of America, folks. And that it's because it really needs a reform at the sort of state level because people use, it's very cheap to file an eviction in this part of the world in North Charleston. So landlords use evictions for all kinds of stuff. They don't just use evictions for like what evictions are really supposed to be for, which is at the very end of a process of not getting cooperation, you file an eviction. They'll use evictions like as soon as you're a day late, they'll file an eviction because it's cheap and it's a way to sort of like scare the person into, and so exactly. And so you end up people having like eviction proceedings filed against them, and we do take those things into account as we sort of vet applicants. Yeah.
I'm sorry. You're saying that if I have not paid my rent on the 3rd of the month, because I haven't done the 5th, file an eviction against me?
You can file an eviction against somebody.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can file it you can file it on the 6th, but you can't file it on the 2nd. But when I file it on the 6th, there is a 30-day process. The sheriff isn't going to just come and put me out. So
that's right.
If I pay it by the 15th, I'm okay, right?
No, it's still an eviction on your record. And then it'll keep going like every month. So I've met tenants that have 5 or 6 evictions just because they were late on rent and they couldn't work it with the landlord.
Yeah, and it can be other things too. It doesn't just have to be a late rent. It could be other kind of things that the landlord's not happy about. Landlord file an eviction. So, yeah.
And then they charge fees on top of that. So
That's
what I see in my line of work when our customers come in and have to get a cashier's check because Now the landlord has tacked on all kinds of fees in addition to, well, I didn't pay my rent, but now you're giving me more fees, and if I don't pay those, then I'm definitely out. And that's, it's a sad cycle.
And sometimes they won't even accept the payment from you at that point.
And then they'll put it on their credit as well.
Well, see, our agency pays the rent, and then what happens to us, we unfortunately won't pay your rent until you already have a plan and method of how you're gonna pay next month's rent, because we pay everything. We pay the late fee, and then because we have a cap, usually after we help you 1 month, you can't come back for the rest of the year. But I feel something, because I assume that if I pay my debt to society, i.e. my landlord, then I got a clean slate in November.
I just also wanted to disagree with you as well, Rem, that it is something that legislation, which is why South Carolina is part of the fight right now for a national tenant bill of rights, as well as mostly for a right.
Sorry, can you speak up a little bit? The people on the phone at Mount Moriah want to hear, and they're not able to hear you.
I just wanted to agree with the Metanoia representative that South Carolina is in the fight right now for a national tenant bill of rights that would stop the serial eviction process. And also as a state, we are working on a right for folks to be able to have representation when they're evicted, because you actually are not due a lawyer here in Charleston. You don't get a lawyer, and you don't have the housing court to go to sort some of those things. Well, there's a pilot for it right now.
That's what I thought, we had a grant.
We have a question over here.
Yeah, so actually I want to talk to both of you so much. So I actually just came from Housing Court across the street, where they have the pilot program and they have the attorneys there. So they were, I think they were able to keep evictions off every record that I saw today by negotiating that with the landlords or the landlord's attorneys, which is limited to Charleston. I'm at Charleston Legal Access, and through Equal Justice First, we're actually trying to expand that to additional counties. So you guys seem passionate. Don't leave before I get to talk.
I think that we're on a sprint. We may be on a sprint.
I think so. Yes. Lots of really good things happening. So I definitely want to.
Well, unfortunately, I have to go to a circles meeting. However, somebody from my agency met you yesterday and forwarded me your email, Tara.
This is what United and Trident United Way is all about, uniting all of the people together and figuring out a way to make positive change for the people in our community. So I'm loving this conversation that's taking place. Definitely good.
I did have one more question.
Yes.
And this might be on the topic of what we're at, maybe it's not, but it's something that is not talked about to me enough when it comes to housing and attainability, and that is the homeless population. As we know, Charleston in itself has an enormous problem with our homeless. I don't know if anybody has been behind the Best Buy and the Walmart shopping plaza in North Charleston, but there is a city back there.
Behind Mount Moriah.
A full city, and I'm not talking about 1 or 2 tents, I'm talking about a village. And I go back there, I know a lot of them because I support and feed them. And I think that the question is, that I'm gonna get to now is there any talk and any, support for housing attainability for those people who we don't know what their situation was? And many of them were just like us, they work every day and things happen. So is there any talks out there about that or helping to support that?
That's a great question. I mean, I think, it is not at all uncommon for us when we do that prospective tenants for some part of that tenant, some part of that person's journey to include homelessness at some point. And, but I think it all comes down to, a lack of, it's probably a better question for like 180 Place or one of those partners that we're working more directly with folks that are immediately homeless. But it's still, there's definitely a shortage of housing, as all these towns, behind places attest, and so I don't know where that conversation is more broadly, other than to say there needs to be one, and we just need to continue to increase supply across the board to improve that situation.
Yeah, and I'll speak from the coalition perspective. So we've been working with Susan Young from Neighbors Together, and she's been just super awesome and just providing good information and good partnerships and resources around the homeless population and kind of what those needs are. And so that is a conversation that we definitely are aware of, and that, you know, we continue to have that conversation and continue to try to think about solutions around that. So, yeah.
I know some cities are building these tiny houses. That's one of the biggest things. I know California literally just dedicated, I believe, it used to be an apartment complex, and they basically turned it into a housing unit for the homeless. Now, they have to do certain things for criteria, but it gives them a start.
Yeah.
So thank you for.
Yeah, you know, this is not a problem which there are not solutions. Like, there are solutions. There are solutions to eviction crises. There are solutions to housing affordability. You know, it's not silver bullets, but there are solutions to make it better. And so we just all have to be concerned about it and speak up about it enough that some of those solutions become reality.
That coalition will help.
That's right.
Together.
Yep.
Bring all the ideas to fruition, so. All right, well, are there any more questions from anyone in the room at all? I want to make sure everyone has a chance to have asked and answered. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us today. I want to thank our speakers, Craig, Bill, and Esther. Mariah, for joining us online. We have a little something special for you to be presenting from today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And once again, thank you to Trident United Way, thank you to my AALC members and steering committee members. Look for more information from Trident United Way for some upcoming events. AALC, we are looking to host a drive in the holiday time period. We're getting that together now for the November to December time period for a couple of schools out in rural areas here in our community that have a need. So look for information about that to come. Look for information also from our other donor networks that have opportunities for you to give back in the community and get involved and get your voice heard. And we are also looking at opportunities for us to get together in the Social Network as well as a part of the hard work that we do in the community. So stay on the lookout for all the information via email, social media, and all of the above. In the meantime, y'all drive safe. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.